So I just wanted to welcome you and thank you for joining us for this SCS information session. My name is Jen Gordon and I am the Program Director at School of Continuing Studies, and I'll be your moderator today. I would like to start by acknowledging the land on which University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. During today's session, we will be providing an overview of our Passing the CFA exam prep courses. At the end of this presentation, we'll have time for questions and answers. So once the presentation begins, feel free to type in your questions in the chat box. That's also located at the bottom right corner by clicking on the two purple arrows. We will try to address as many of your questions as we can during the question and answer period. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, which includes the comments in the chat box. The recording of this session will be shared with you in a few days. And so with that, I am pleased to introduce you to Michael Hlinka. Michael received his MBA from the University of Toronto in 1986, became a CFA charter holder in 2004, and is a tenured professor at George Brown College. From 2002 to 2015, Michael was a frequent business communicator for CBC Radio and Television. He has co-written 2 children's books, Follow Your Money and Follow Your Stuff, and his solo effort is Stalled Jumpstarting the Canadian Economy. On a weekly basis, he hosts a podcast dedicated to investing in the National Football League. Michael and his wife have a 5-year-old son, Wyatt, who is the best thing that has ever happened to both of them. So with that, Michael, welcome, and thank you so much for being here, and I'll hand it over to you.
Jen, thank you very much for the very, very kind introduction. And for the few people who were here a couple of minutes ago, my son did a very, very brief cameo. But like any true star, he realizes that if you have too much exposure, the magic is gone. I'd like to thank everybody for joining this session. And what's very, very important to me before people commit to both the CFA program and passing the CFA courses is that you're making an informed decision about really what you're getting into. So what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to sort of keep my introductory comments to probably between, I'm guessing, 15 to 25 minutes. Then I really would like to open it up and spend most of the time on any questions that you might have as individuals. What I am going to be doing right now, and I'm going to be putting this in the chat bar, is I'm going to be providing, I'm just trying to do a couple of things at once and not typing effectively, so just one moment, please. I think everybody should now see my email address. It's just my name, michael.hlinka@utoronto.ca. If anybody would like to do a follow-up discussion, a Zoom call about anything either career-related or CFA-related, the ball is in your court. You've got my email address, and I look forward to having those conversations. So what I was hoping to do was just talk a little bit about the genesis of the CFA program, how the CFA program sort of has evolved over the years, why you might want to consider a prep course like, for example, the prep course that we do at the University of Toronto to prepare you for the exam, and really just conclude a little bit about where I see the industry going and the importance of the CFA designation, in particular for the financial services industry. Well, the way that the CFA program started, sort of the genesis of it was just after World War II. And there were a bunch of investment professionals in New York City who sort of got together and they said, and investment was and the whole idea of investment was very much in a kind of nascent stage at that time. If you sort of think about historically what these individuals had seen, this tremendous bull market during the 1920s, then of course the Great Depression and the crash of the stock market, where the Dow Jones Industrial Average went down by 90% and took about a decade to recover from its all-time lows. Of course, coming out of World War II, there was tremendous fiscal stimulus. We're sort of seeing something a little bit similar right now, albeit for a very, very different reason. Anyway, these investment professionals got together and they sort of thought about the following. If you want to become a doctor and you want to follow the medical profession, well, you can go to medical school and you can have a very, very similar education. It's not going to be identical, but a very similar education whether you would go to a school like, for example, Harvard or Stanford or someplace in Texas. Something similar with law schools. Clearly each, of course, in the United States, it's states, in Canada, it's provinces, but clearly each jurisdiction is going to have its sort of specifics, its own peccadillos. But generally, if you were taking a course in legal theory, the course that you would take in New York State and in the state of California, across, of course, the United States, would be more or less the same. But what they said was there really was no common kind of curriculum that someone can pursue if they're looking to get to the highest levels of the investment profession. And it took a while, but the first CFA exams were administered in the early 1960s, and essentially the CFA designation was born. Now, the earliest CFA charter holders were simply investment professionals. I don't know exactly the number of years of experience. I think it was like 5 or 10, but I think that if you had worked in an advisory capacity for a number of years, you could apply, and that was the qualification to become a CFA charter holder. It was really practical work experience. And then what started to happen and what has evolved, and this has been pretty constant now, really for the past almost 50 years, is that finally they decided the group that was originally a bunch of investment professionals that eventually morphed or developed into the CFA Institute, is that what we were going to have, or what the CFA was going to do, is that it was going to be providing 3 examinations. And these examinations would be written once a year. That would be the first Saturday in June. And you would write level 1. And assuming you were successful, you would move on and write level 2. And assuming you were successful, you would write level 3. And once you would finish those 3 levels, then you would finish the educational requirements for a CFA charter holder. That had been pretty constant from around the 1960s for about 40 years until the early 2000s. Now, I got into the investment industry through working, selling mutual funds, and then working in a discount brokerage in the early 1990s. And at that time, the reason why somebody would be taking the CFA designation was because they wanted to be a research analyst. There were very, very few other occupations, front office occupations, that were really looking for or requiring the CFA. So I would argue, probably about 4 to 5, if I could sort of use the word, dream jobs in the investment industry. One is to work in equity research. One is to work in portfolio management, that is managing portfolios, particularly institutional portfolios. One would be sales and trading. One would be investment banking. And one would be retail portfolio management, that is being an investment advisor and managing client accounts. Now, back in the early 1990s, if anybody was working in sales and trading, or almost everybody who was working in sales and trading, had basically gone through the ranks. The first company I worked with was a company called Marathon Brokerage. And Marathon Brokerage had a trading desk. And I don't think that anybody on the trading desk had a university education. What the profile was is that you got out of high school, you were fast on your feet, you were good with numbers, you were personable, you liked a high pressure environment, and you would basically join a desk and you would learn the ropes for a number of years, and then you would become a trader. The investment bankers were almost exclusively recruited out of the top MBA schools. In Toronto, that would have been York and University of Toronto. Of course, in the United States, it would be schools like Wharton, Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. Really, the only occupation that was sort of required, or the only occupation where a CFA was required, was really research on either the buy side or sell side, with the hope that if you were really, really good at research and you had a bunch of other skills, that you could actually become an institutional portfolio manager. Well, that started to change very much. And I would argue that the moment that changed it, or the event that changed it, was the great stock market crash of 2000. For those of you who weren't sort of aware, there was a tremendous, tremendous bull market in the United States in the 1990s. NASDAQ hit a level of 5,000 in March of 2000. And about 18 months later, that same NASDAQ, which had then been 5,000, I think was as low as around 1,100. So it wasn't quite the 90% pullback that we had seen in the Great Depression, but it was somewhere very close to the neighborhood of 80%. And I think at that time, what the industry sort of came together and coalesced and said was, we just need a higher level of expertise. We need a higher level of expertise, not only in research and in portfolio management, that is institutional portfolio management, but we need a higher level of expertise in investment banking. We need a higher level of expertise in retail portfolio management, particularly in the high net worth space. We just need more people who've got a better idea of how all of the elements of capital markets work. Now, this was just a coincidence, but at about the same time, I left the industry to teach full time at George Brown College, and I had to make a decision. And the decision was I going to be pursuing a PhD? At that point, I had a master's degree from the University of Toronto. Was I going to be pursuing a PhD, or was it going to be the CFA designation? And as it turned out, I made absolutely the best decision of my life, and I pursued the CFA designation. When I started working towards my CFA, I was actually teaching at what was at that time the biggest CFA preparation program in the city of Toronto. And what that gave me was a really, really good insight, not into how to go about studying effectively for the exam, but the kind of problems and the kind of issues that people would face if they were taking these examinations and working full time at the same time. This is one of the really important and unique distinguishing characteristics of the CFA designation, in particular compared to a master's, an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration. Most of the MBA courses, in fact, almost all of the MBA courses, assume that you are going to be going to school full time for those 2 years. Well, it's not even really 2 years. It's really 8 months, and then you got a vacation, and then another 8 months. But for that, 20-month period of time, and of course, with any luck, you're working during that 1 year or during those 4 months before years 1 and 2. But the understanding with the MBA is that you really are dedicating yourself to academics and finding that next work opportunity sort of as a full-time occupation. The understanding always with the CFA designation has been that most of the people who are pursuing it are working full-time, and they're almost treating their CFA as a kind of part-time job over that period of time that it takes them to pass the exam. For the longest time, the CFA used to run 3 exams, or the 3 exams, 1 exam a year. It was in 2005 that they added a December examination for level 1 only. So if I would have been doing this presentation, say 2 years ago, I would have said, this is your options for writing the level 1 exam. You could either write it in December or June. If you're going to be writing level 2 or level 3, your only opportunity is in June. Now, COVID sort of turned that upside down on its head. And starting in 2022, which is really sort of in a sense, the return to normalcy, there were so many cancellations because of COVID and deferral of exams that the schedule really is a little bit like a dog's breakfast for the rest of 2021. But starting in 2022, it is going to be much more regular. And there are going to be level 1 exams 4 times a year: in February, in May, in August, and in November. There are going to be 2 level 2 exams every year. Those exams are going to be in February and August, and 2 level 3 exams every year. And those exams are going to be in May and November. So they're increasing the number of exams, probably to increase the number of CFA charter holders. I think that would be a big part of it. But also to give people a little bit more flexibility in managing their lives. I know that in the past, I've just heard this anecdotally, a lot of people, because a lot of people do get married in the summertime, aren't crazy about scheduling an exam in the summer. Now, this allows them to write in the same calendar and perhaps avoid that. A lot of students will ask me, given that I have both an MBA and a CFA, why would I pursue the CFA designation compared to the MBA designation? What are the important differences between the two? Well, I would say most fundamentally, the biggest difference is that you buy an MBA and you earn a CFA. And I say that having both designations. The most important barrier to entry right now for the MBA programs, in my opinion, is the tuition. If you're looking to do an MBA at, for example, the University of Toronto, the annual tuition, just tuition, I believe right now is around $45,000 a year. And the MBAs have become such a great moneymaker for schools that what schools have done is they followed a kind of natural impulse, and that has increased the intake for their MBA programs because of the demand. And Lovedeep, I'm going to get to all the questions at the end. Okay, so I promise I will get there with the CFA qualifications and what is required in order to get there in the first place. Absolutely not a problem. The nice thing about the CFA is that it only costs to this day about $1,000 to register with CFA Institute. That's $1,000 US, so call it $1,200 Canadian. And you always have the opportunity to do the exams yourself. So you could be out of the CFA program for around $5,000. The other really important thing that the CFA designation does compared to an MBA designation is the CFA exams are structured as competitive examinations. What the CFA will do, and you can research this yourself to see what the exact numbers are for each exam, but generally speaking, the pass rate for level 1 is around 40 to 45%. Now, of course, if 40 to 45% of the students are passing the exam, well, the arithmetic is 55 to 60%, that is the majority are failing the exam. The pass rate for the level 2 exam is generally around 45 to 50, and the pass rate for level 3 is around 50 to 55. Because these are competitive examinations, there is a kind of credibility that the CFA designation will bring that, frankly, the MBA does not. And what I've seen in my lifetime is that the importance of the CFA, if you are working in the financial services industry in particular, the importance of the CFA has just gone absolutely ballistic. It's just gone parabolic over the past 20 years. Whereas the MBA is sort of as important or unimportant as it ever was. And that would be something that I would be thinking about very, very carefully if I were making that decision between the CFA and the MBA. The CFA is also gaining cachet with other industries because of the rigor, particularly the rigor involved with discounted cash flow analysis. We can talk a little bit more about that if you'd like to later on in this presentation. The MBA is a more general designation. So if you don't, for example, if someone said to me, I know that I want to do something in business, but I'm not really sure whether it's investments or, it might be sales, it might be marketing, it might be some role with the government, I'm just not sure, then probably the MBA will open more different disparate doors. But when it comes to the investment industry and something finance related, then there is nothing like the CFA designation. And I will go back and I will repeat myself. The market is increasingly understanding that people are out there buying MBAs and people are out there earning the CFA designation. And my feeling is that there's going to be a continued, if I can sort of use the word backlash, against some of these higher education programs where both individuals and more importantly employers are really saying, I'm not really sure that there's the value in this from my perspective. I don't know why I'd want to bring in somebody with an MBA as opposed to somebody who's gone through the fire of the CFA, understanding, of course, that that person who's gone through the fire of the CFA completed their education while they were working full time. Now the employer is thinking this person is very organized, they're very hardworking, they're very focused, and they're sort of frankly expecting that you're going to be taking that time that you spent towards your studies and now piling it into your full-time occupation. So that would be how I would be counterpointing and comparing and contrasting the MBA and the CFA designation. Now, assuming that you decide that the CFA designation is correct for you, then the decision that I think each person has to make is, do I want to do this on my own, or do I want to work with a preparation program or preparer, like, for example, the University of Toronto School of Continuing Studies? And a little bit of autobiographical background about myself. So when I was taking the CFA program, I was at that time a full-time instructor at George Brown College, and I had over 10 years of practical industry experience as well. When I looked at the level 1 curriculum, I felt very, very well qualified to take it. There was a lot of overlap between what I was instructing in and the actual content itself. And I passed the level 1 examination without too much difficulty. I think I was very, very lucky to pass the level 2 examination on my first attempt, even though I did. At that time, my attention was a little bit, well, it wasn't quite as focused because at the same time that I was studying the level 2 content, I was actually teaching both level 2 and level 3 courses in a couple of different functional areas. So I was a little bit unfocused, and I took, I think, the difficulty of level 2 a little bit for granted. I learned my lesson. I buckled down for level 3, and I also passed level 3 on my first attempt. I was able to do the CFA program without taking any additional courses, but I came at it uniquely qualified. And the reason I came at it uniquely qualified was I had 10 years of practical work experience where I had been getting my hands dirty with many of the concepts, many of the actual areas that were part of the content for levels 1, 2, and 3. I was instructing in courses where there was a great deal of overlap between the CFA content and the courses where I was instructing. And frankly, when you are a full-time instructor at the community college level, as I was, you have an unbelievable, and Denny, I'm going to be getting there as well, I promise. Okay, I promise I'm going to be getting to all of these. And I'll do it in order with Love Deeps and then Denny's first. And the third advantage is when you're an instructor, you can really control your life. So I could be doing my studying when I was freshest. I could, if I had a class, let's say at 12 noon, I could get my studying in the morning. So I'm ultra fresh when I'm studying, and I'm really maximizing the effectiveness of that. Bottom line, it is possible to do the CFA and to pass the CFA examinations without taking a course. Now, the question is, why would you take the particular U of T course? Well, when I started teaching this course, I had, once again, I think a little bit of a unique advantage compared to a lot of other people. I was asked to bring in and design it from the ground up. So I'd been instructing in the CFA, and I'd had experience as well at Georgetown College teaching people who were working full time. And I thought that what my mission was going to be and how I would make this a really, really effective experience was to make the studying that students were doing as efficient as possible. The promise, I believe, of the U of T program is that you will never study more efficiently in your life. And please let me explain why. When I was an undergraduate, I think this is the experience of most people on this call. When I was an undergraduate in university and when I was in graduate school doing my MBA, it was assumed that students would read the content before they came to class. And that was and is unbelievably time inefficient. I prepared audio pre-lessons that I want you to listen to. That audio pre-lesson before you come to class will contextualize what we will discuss. Then what I will be doing is I will be providing a very, very focused lecture that is going to be hitting the key, most important points. And that's an evening class. So our classes for level 1 are Tuesday nights, for level 2 Wednesday nights, for level 3 Thursday nights. And then on the weekend, we will be doing a tutorial session, where we are working through the most important problems. It's almost lecture tutorial. And what I will be doing on a weekly basis, and what I do on a weekly basis, is give you a very detailed study schedule of what you should be doing on a weekly basis in order to keep up with the work and position yourself for success on the examinations. So the way that I would urge you to think about what we do at the University of Toronto is we don't offer a course as much as we offer a program. And that program includes audio lessons, live classes, video modules where you can revisit me presenting the most difficult concepts and the most difficult content, proprietary notes, which I prepared, and supplemental quizzes, tests, and examinations, and very importantly, access to me outside of class time to get any one-on-one tutoring that you would need. That sort of broadly speaking is the overview of what I'm doing. The other unique benefit of taking this course compared to any other CFA prep course that I know of at least is that what started happening when I was doing the CFA program was that students would be reaching out to me or people who I'd previously worked in the industry, and they would say, something like the following: we're looking to add somebody in our team of private wealth managers. And this person will has a career path to become a retail portfolio manager one day. We're looking for somebody who's got 2 or 3 years of work experience and has passed CFA level 1 as a CFA level 2 candidate. And what I would do is I would come into the classroom, or because we're going to be doing stuff online for the August examination, for the August courses, I would come into the classroom and say, hey, if anybody's interested in doing this, shoot me your resume. I'll forward it through to my friend, put in a good word for you if I can. And a number of students got jobs because of that. Now, what started to happen over the years was that people would be reaching out to me looking for people in months like June, July, August, when we had no classes. So what I put together was an email distribution list for employment opportunities. There is no charge to be part of this group. And when an opportunity comes out, I send out an email blast and I let my network know about it. My network, by the way, is right now about 2,500 people. And yesterday, for instance, I sent out 2 unique opportunities, and both of them are very, very good. Both of them are very, very CFA oriented. And it's a very nice extra benefit. The other unique thing about this course is once COVID passes, what we are going to be doing is regularly, either every 3 months or every 6 months, doing networking opportunities. Now, the networking opportunities will be not only the people who are currently in the program, but people who have graduated from the program. And this was really addressing Denny's point. Denny, I was going to be hitting this anyway, but that's how we're going to be doing the networking in the future. Probably the events that we will be doing will be probably on Friday nights. They will be probably somewhere in downtown Toronto. I'm not sure whether or not the best thing will be to find one unique kind of venue to do it in, or maybe move it around, like maybe one time do it around Yonge and Bloor, maybe one time around Bay and King. That's going to be worked out. But we are going to be getting back and being much more systematic about the networking in the future. Let me talk to Lovedeep's point about, can I take the CFA with only a high school diploma and experience in a banking institution? Lovedeep, what I would urge you to do is contact CFA Institute. If they believe that you've had enough experience and the experience meets their criteria, then they will make a special exemption and they will allow you to enter the CFA program. This is not a decision, however, that I have any input into whatsoever. The CFA Institute have a 1-800 number that you can call, or you can email them and they will get back to you in a very short period of time. The next question I'd like to address is AMIs, and that's what jobs we can take while preparing for level 1 and after passing level 1. The truth of the matter is, if you're taking level 1 and you're just cutting your teeth in the industry, what you are going to be doing very much is you're going to be doing something that is well below what you would like to do in the future. You're probably looking at either an administrative job or a kind of customer service opportunity. But that is not a bad thing, because what I urge students to do is get one of those opportunities in an institution that needs the skills of a CFA charter holder. So if, for example, Amy, and I don't know your individual situation, this is why I would like to have the chance to talk to each of you individually who's interested on a Zoom call. If you would say to me, for instance, I'm really, really interested in working in equity research one day. That's sort of really what my dream job is. Then I would suggest try to get a job in either an administrative job or a job in customer service at one of the mutual fund companies. Because all of the major mutual fund companies, they're all headquartered in Toronto, all of them ultimately one day will require research analysts. So what you're doing is you're building up the skills that you need to get to where you actually want to be. But what you're also doing is you're building up a history with that particular company. So they know you, they like you, they trust you, they see that you're always on time for work. They see that you've got a great attitude. They see that you're easy to work with. You've basically given them every reason to say yes when there is that entry-level job in equity research. So just to summarize, the jobs that you can take while you're preparing for level 1 are probably going to be pretty basic, probably either administrative in nature or customer service in nature, but where you start is not where you end. Farhan is asking a question, with level 3 being in November, do you think the August session will allow time to be well prepared? Yeah, absolutely. And let me just, Farhan, sort of reflect on that a little bit. So as I told you, once upon a time, the CFA used to write just 3 times a year. There were sittings for level 1, 2, and 3, and they were all in June. So when we started preparing the CFA program, what we would do is we would start all of our classes in late October to prepare students for the June exam. We would do 8 classes up to the break for the Christmas holidays. The break was generally around 3 weeks when the school was closed. And then we would come back and we would do another 14 classes. And that gave students lots and lots of time and lots of runway, particularly at the end. But what I also found with that is a lot of students took the first 8 weeks of the course very much for granted and really didn't do the kind of studying that should have been doing until it was like the new year. So it's effectively, rather than having 7 months to study for it, they really brought it down to 5. Well, when the examination for level 1 examination for December was introduced, we delivered and we came up with a new delivery method. And the delivery method was, rather than 1 class for 24 weeks, each of which was 3 hours, we were going to be doing 12 weeks, but 2 classes a week. Of course, 12 times 2 is 24. So the same number of hours in class. And what we actually found was that the pass rates for those students who were writing in December was higher than the pass rates for those students who are writing in June. So for the classes that we're going to be doing that are commencing in August, and this is true for level 1, level 2, and level 3, we are going to be going to school once a week for 3 hours on, if you're level 1, Tuesday night, if you're level 2, Wednesday night, if you're level 3, Thursday night, and then we'll be doing 3 hours of tutorials, if I could use that word, for level 1 on Saturday morning, 3 hours level 2 Saturday afternoon, and 3 hours for level 3 midday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time. All of the classes for the August session will be delivered online. And Farhan, yes, I believe that there will be enough time to be well prepared if you follow the guidelines. But that's a very, very big if. It will be very important for anybody who wants to, who has not looked at the content before, to make sure that from day one, you stay on top of the content. YG has asked a question. If you have a CIM already, is it worth doing a CFA? And that's a very good question, YG. So what the CIM will allow you to do, and I'm sorry, I forgot what the acronym stands for, something investment manager, I believe. The CIM is a designation that you could achieve through the Canadian Securities Institute. It will allow you to be a discretionary portfolio manager. So YG, if your goal is to be a discretionary portfolio manager in the retail space, then that's enough, because that is being grandfathered. On the other hand, if you want to do sort of anything else, it is chartered investment manager, thank you. If you want to do anything else, then like YG, can you just type in, what is your ultimate career goal? Because that would really help me answer that question of whether or not you should do the CFA. Okay, then investment banking, you absolutely must do a CFA. The CIM is not going to get you into an investment banking decision. Mark says, I have a 3-year BA, but also an EMBA. Do I satisfy the academic requirements? Mark, almost certainly. I think the answer is yes. Hong is asking, for entry-level positions at financial institution banks, CSE is required as it seems. What positions would be available for a CFA level 1 passer? So first of all, there was a change made not several years ago, probably now it's going back about 2 years, where if you have passed level 1, you will get academic credit for passing the Canadian Securities course as well. So in a sense, Hong, that almost not really answers that question, but in a sense, it almost does. The question about what positions are available for a CFA level 1, so you pass the CFA level 1 examination. and what positions would be available. Typically, this is the way that the career path works, or the way that the career path works most optimally, is you've already got some kind of job in the financial services industry while you're pursuing your CFA. And that includes level 1. After you pass level 1, it is going to open doors and open opportunities to you that you otherwise wouldn't have. And then that will happen with level 2 and level 3 as well. But I really urge anybody right now who's either just graduating from university or starting out, what you want to think about doing is sort of matching the arc of your career path with the arc of passing the levels of the CFA. That is, you want to do both at the same time. And as you're passing level of the CFA, you want to be developing your career and moving up the hierarchy, moving up the food chain, as it were. The next question is marks. Are your courses offered online? Are the exams all computer-based? The answer is all of the courses right now are going to be offered online. So what we are doing right now, the next courses are going to begin in August. There are levels exams for level 1, 2, and 3. Just because of COVID, it's never going to happen like this again. There are exams for COVID for all 3 levels in November. What we will be doing in November, when the classes have ended for the November examination, is we will be doing weekly prep courses for level 1 and level 3 for the May exam. Now, for those prep courses, depending on what happens with U of T, we're going to be doing the classes, evening classes online. Level 1 classes will remain on Tuesday night. Level 3 classes will remain on Thursday night. But then what we will be doing in Toronto on Saturdays is offering in-class office hours that are going to be somewhat optional, but we're going to be from this point forward following the model where it is going to be, for the most part, lecture in the class time on the evenings, and then it's going to be more practical and question-based and problem-based on the weekends, but in person. And I can't remember, let me just find out who was asking Denny for the networking. That will really then allow the networking much more. And does a job in accounting, Christine is asking, does a job in accounting qualify as work experience when gaining my CFA designation? The answer is a qualified yes. And the reason why it's a qualified yes is that what you will be asked is, have you had 4 years of full-time work experience where at least half of your duties are assisting in the investment decision-making process? And to a great extent, Christine, your ability to basically sell them on that is how you are going to be writing your job description and how you are going to be presenting your CV to them. So it really depends. But there have been a lot of people who've done accounting where the answer 100% is yes. It looks like, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, Paz, with 4 years experience as a credit analyst, will I automatically qualify as a charter holder after passing level 3? If you've been a credit analyst for 4 years, I've never seen a credit analyst who's been refused. So once again, I don't want to ever say anything 100% definitively, because really what matters is the way that you present your work experience to the people at CFA Institute. But a credit analyst, if you've been a hardcore credit, that's all you're doing. Like the only work that you're doing as a credit analyst is really determining who gets the loan and who doesn't get the loan. Clearly that is involved in the investment decision-making process. YG, do we need to read the material before attending each lecture? No, I don't want you to read the material. What I want you to do is I want you to listen to the audio lessons, and then I want you to follow along with me with the material, making sure that you understand it. It's just YG way more time efficient. JT, do you recommend we purchase additional materials? I absolutely recommend that you do not purchase additional materials. Everything you need will be provided by the University of Toronto. I think it is a huge mistake to do anything additional. Shigar said, with the change, oh, sorry, Darren, I thank you. So let me do Darren's because I missed this question. I apologize. Can you explain the level 2 exam schedule? Is it true that if you fail the November 21 exam, you cannot retake until August 22? but if you pass, you can take the level 3 in May. Darren, that's 100% correct. The reason is they don't let you write any exams more frequently, the same exam in 6 months. And the way that the cycle works for level 2 starting in 2022 is they're going to be writing November and then August. So the answer is absolutely yes. Shakara is saying with the change that is moving from paper-based to computer-based, I assume the most affected is level 3. I would agree with that. Have you addressed these changes in your course, or we don't need any change? I explained more theory than calculation questions. Yes, Shakar, I have addressed the changes in the course. The level 3 examination is far less quantitative than it previously was, and that is going to be reflected in the delivery of the course. Absolutely no question. The problem, however, Shakar, is that what they've done this year could have just been a head fake, or what they've done this exam could have been a head fake. So I think it's important for level 3 exam to know and have a very, very good grasp on anything quantitative, because with quantitative questions, there is a right answer and there is a wrong answer. There's no ambiguity. 2 plus 2 is equal to what? Well, there's only one correct answer. Now, if I were asking a more subjective thing about, should we be investing right now in the stock market or real estate, you can make answers either way. So I think you sort of understand where I'm getting with that. I still think that mastery of the quantitative content is very, very important. But I would agree that with the base to computer-based, it seems now there's a greater emphasis in level 3 on qualitative as opposed to quantitative. Christine, this is just a general question for level 1. Is it enough to only know the lecture materials without solving exercises? No, the answer for that is absolutely not. You have to understand the lecture materials. You have to be able to understand the notes and be able to relate to the notes. But a key part of preparing for any of these examinations is mastery of the CFA end of chapter problems. And that's what we're basically going to be spending a half of our time on, Christine, whether it's level 1, level 2, or level 3. We're going to be doing, for the August classes, we're going to be doing the theory. I'm going to be making sure that you leave the class understanding the basic concepts. But what we are going to be doing on the weekend sessions, whether it's level 1, level 2, level 3, is we are going to be digging down into the specific types of problems that they are actually going to be giving you on the examination. Mahak asked, you're very welcome, Sakar, how is the FRM and CFA different in context of profession and area of studies? The FRM is a designation that is designed for those students who want to specialize in risk management. And basically what they do with the FRM is they carve out some of the CFA content, and basically they make that 100% of the course. So if you achieve the CFA designation, for all intents and purposes, you've achieved the FRM designation as well, or at least you've got the body of knowledge. Now, the reason why you might want to think about the FRM rather than the CFA is that it would take you a lot less time. And the other thing it signals to the employer or a prospective employer is, I really want to get into risk management. Like, this is what I'm passionate about. I don't care so much about equity research. I'm not looking to perhaps, give myself a backdoor to be a retail portfolio manager. I'm really involved. I'm really interested in risk and how risk works and containing it and quantifying it, et cetera. So there might be some employers who sort of like that because you're demonstrating that, you've got a very, very keen focus, as opposed to a kind of more general designation, which the CFA has, that just opens, frankly, a heck of a lot more doors. And Christine, you're very welcome. If I'm interested in writing the level 3 exam in May 22, yeah, absolutely. JT, what I would recommend that you would think about, however, just because things are so weird right now, I would strongly recommend that you think about taking the course in August. We'd let you re-register for the November exam at no extra charge. You could just you just go right into that. And in this case, you would be basically getting 2 exams for the price, or 2 prep courses for the price of 1. The answer is, however, if you do start in November, you will have enough time for the May 2022 exam. We're going to be going twice a week. There will not be a break for the Christmas holidays. Patrick, I am available for questions during the weekdays, and it would be preferably by a video call or email. I don't own a cell phone, but I have Zoom. I work Zoom all the time, and you got my email address. So and the answer is, yeah, during the weekdays is best for me. Typically, the hours that I ask students to sort of contact me, or I'm hoping to schedule stuff, is sort of between like noon and 5 o'clock, something like that. Full disclosure, I like to play with my son in the morning at the park. Yeah, Amy, this is exactly what you should do it. So with respect, Amy, with respect to the Saturday classes, all of the classes are recorded. So what I would urge you to do is take the August program 100%. And what you will be doing instead is you will just be following along with those classes that I'm offering. You'll just be doing it on the Sunday rather than Saturday. Christine, the percentage of pass from the students who have already completed your course. Well, it's hard, Christine, this year to get a really good handle on that. Typically, what we've been looking at in the past is for the students who, what I would call, successfully completed the course, and that means writing the quiz at the final exam. It was always in the neighborhood of like 80 to 85%, pretty consistently for the 3 levels. It's a little bit different now that it's online. I think the fact that it's online, well, first of all, we can't really capture those numbers in the same way anymore. So it's really hard for me to make any representations given the way that we're delivering it right now. But what I can say is that in the past, for students who successfully completed the in-class sessions when they were in class, it was generally a good rule of thumb was 80 to 85%. Patrick, tutorials, 3 hours. So Patrick, what we will do for level 1 is for the August session, we'll be going from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. For the level 2, we'll be going from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And then for level 3 on Sunday mornings from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Arrow. Is the May 2020 CFA exam going to be a sprint? And no, it's not. So the May 22 exam, starting for the 2022 exams, we're going to be going back to something, Errol, that looks more like the traditional model. And what I mean by the traditional course model is we'll be doing, for level 3, we'll be doing our classes 3 hours on Thursday nights. Then what we will be doing is we'll be having 2-hour tutorials every Saturday in person. So it's going to be, there's going to be 20 weeks altogether, and then you'll have about 5 weeks or so to pull it all together at the end. So it's going to be far less of a sprint and much more like, I don't want to use the phrase marathon, but it's going to be much less of a sprint. And it's going to be much more like, if I could sort of use a metaphor from track and field, like maybe the 1,500 meters. Mahak, can you discuss CFA from the point of view of starting something of your own rather than just looking for a job? Can the CFA start an individual practice? Well, now I'm assuming, Mahak, that you would like to work something in the financial services industry. And if you want to work in the financial services industry, what the CFA designation does is it just gives you a kind of instant credibility that you wouldn't otherwise have. And, the metaphor that I would use is, you don't have to go to a licensed physiotherapist if you know physiotherapy. You don't have to go. You could go to somebody down the street and they can, do the massage or do the whatever. But you're probably going to pay that extra and get that licensed physiotherapist just because they've gone through a kind of rigorous training. And that's the same thing that I would say about the CFA designation. We've had, for example, a couple of people in the past. We've had at least 1 and maybe 2 medical doctors, believe it or not, who studied with us because they wanted to get into wealth management. They wanted to move from fixing people's health to fixing their portfolios. And they recognized the value of the CFA designation in terms of establishing their own credibility. Ben, any insights on students' pass rates for this course for level 2 specifically compared to those published by CFA Institute? Yeah, I mean, typically, Ben, for our level 2 students, but again, this is so different. It was so different because we could keep track of what students were doing on a weekly basis. And COVID and the fact that we have to do everything distance has just changed things. But, our level 2 pass rates typically were around, for the students who completed the course, typically around 80%, with the overall pass rates for CFA Institute were closer to 45%. But that's for students who completed the course. came to class, wrote the quizzes, wrote the tests, and wrote the final exam. What has always been an issue and will always be an issue with the CFA is the number of students who drop out along the way, simply because it's too much work, it's too hard, it's too frustrating, and many of you are at a point in your life where you're juggling career, in some cases family as well, and then CFA, and it's just too much. Patrick, is the class tutorial being recorded 100%? Absolutely. Everything is recorded, definitely. So if you miss a class, or even if you attend the class and you want to take a look at it again, you've got that chance to do that. So yes, everything 100% is fully recorded. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of the number of questions. So what I will do once again, and now this is the third time, is provide you with my U of T email address. I would really urge you, if you want to learn a little bit more about how the course works or just have a discussion about life or the industry, shoot me an email. I will check, I promise, later this afternoon. Yeah, no question, Samad. If you want to get into private equity, CFA is absolutely the best designation you can possibly think of. No ifs, ands, or buts on that. And what I mean by the best designation, I'm sort of saying of anything past like an undergraduate. Yeah, private equity, CFA level 1, no question about that.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Michael, for the wealth of information that you provided. Again, anybody, if you have any further follow-up questions, feel free to email Michael directly at michael.hlinka@utoronto.ca, and he'll be in touch. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach the school and we'll get in contact with you there. Again, the recording will be shared in a few days. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day and the week.